What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get
Strangely
to it.
enough, the Insignia, despite all its technical refinements and advantages, sold poorly. While competitors in the face of the same Passat, Mondeo, Mazda 6 and Superb were sold in 5 to 15,000 copies, Opel did not sell. In Russia, even 15,000 cars before the restyling in 2013. And the matter is not in prices. Yes, for the version OPC asked 1.6 million rubles, and for the Cross Universal Country Tourer, which appeared after the restyling, from 1.3 million. But the price lists for conventional versions started from about 750 to 800,000 rubles. Partly, the reasons for low demand were written off to the lack of automatic transmissions in inexpensive versions with base engines. Automatic was initially available only with powerful turbo engines. After restyling, this mistake was corrected, but it was too late. The update took place in 2013, and in early 2015 Opel has already announced its departure from our market. At the same time, many owners of Insignia, especially all-wheel drive, still regret this loss, believing that it was one of the best models on the market, and there is simply no equivalent replacement. How will the search for such a best car in used form turn out? Considering that Insignia came to us in 2010, and left in 2015, the cars are not yet very old, and serious bodywork problems are almost never encountered. Basically, defects are successfully fought with defects at an early stage, and galvanization gives a chance to manage to do it even. Not the most diligent owners. However, the probability of meeting defects is quite possible. Thresholds, for example, quite willingly fade and rust in the area of sandblasting behind the front wheels, and there is also located the whole of the fender mount, so this area is better not to start, to prevent rot. And without front mudguards, not only the sill suffers, but also the lower edge of the front fender. The edges of the arches are almost always chipped and quite quickly begin to rust, so that repainted because of the marches and even wings are common. The main thing is to hit the color was qualitative. Fenders, by the way, are repainted also because of chips at the joints with bumpers, which are also not uncommon. It is also worth inspecting the car from below for corrosion. The subframe mounting points, the subframes themselves and the underbody should not be beaten by rust and operation, especially in all-wheel drive cars. The front part of the car traditionally collects chips and scuffs. The hood here is aluminum, which does not exclude the possibility of its corrosion. And by the way, you can identify the car after a frontal accident by its non-original steel hood. From the inspection of the windshield frame, where there may be chips, you can move on to the roof, where the Insignia has an unexpected congenital disease. The gutters here have no plastic moldings, and rust can be found here, ranging from isolated pockets to a red streak along the entire length of the roof. At the rear of sedans and hatchbacks in the zone of risk is a wide chrome strip on the trunk lid and the area around it, and on station wagons, where the license plate area is on the trunk door, the area around it. Given the massiveness of the model, there is no need to talk about the difficulty of finding body parts, but this does not mean that the restoration of the car after an accident will be frankly cheap. For example, headlights cost from 10 to 15,000, for which you can buy non-original halogen optics, up to 40 to 60,000 for their original adaptive xenon AFL+, for which there are no substitutes. The front bumper can be bought for 10,000, but grills, moldings and overlays can run up to 20 to 30 more. The front fender is available for 2,500, but the hood for 10,000 will be steel. Aluminum will cost 25 to 30,000. And when choosing a windshield, it is worth paying attention to details like a set of sensors. Non-original glass costs from 5 to 7,000. Against 30 to 50,000 for the original, but it is important to choose the right one. The Insignia suspensions are Marfersen up front and Multi-Link at the rear, with the design of the rear suspension depending on the type of drive. There are not so many difficulties with suspension, though Germans in pursuit of the best have introduced something expensive and modern, adaptive suspension flex ride. If you want a car with it, carefully inspect shock absorbers and check the work of suspension control electronics on the move. The price of a mistake here is rather high, 25 to 35,000 for the original shock absorber without alternatives, while the usual original will cost half as much, and a quality non-original can be bought for $5,000. However, the adaptive suspension was an option, and there is always a possibility to refuse it in the process of ownership. Otherwise, maintenance and repair of the running gear are not too ruinous. For example, the front ball bearing is changed together with the lever, but the lever can be bought for $3,000 to $5,000. Rear levers cost $3,000 to $5,000 each, though on all-wheel drive cars prices can be much less humane. Partly what helps here is the fact that silent blocks are available. By the way, when selecting parts, especially for the rear suspension, it is necessary to be attentive. Structurally, the running gear has not changed with restyling, but the details have changed. Hub bearings start from $3,000, and expendables like stabilizer struts are traditionally Copex. The Insignia's braking system is quite ordinary, and there are no expensive solutions here. An exception can be called only brakes of the OPC version. Here only front perforated brake discs with a diameter of 355 mm will cost more than $20,000 per piece, even in non-original version from Brembo or Magneti Marelli. Otherwise, everything is quite usual, although the brakes, despite the mechanism with a floating bracket in all civil variants, still differ depending on the motor. It can be discs for 296, 321 or 337 mm. At the back on powerful turbocharged cars are used ventilated discs instead of solid ones. However, the prices for all consumables in any case remain acceptable. 2,000 to 5,000 rubles for a disc and 1,500 for a set of pads. The power steering even on the restyled Insignia in Russia remains hydraulic. This is due to the absence of active driver's assistance. In service and repair, however, it promises only pluses, instead of expensive rack and electric motor, which are available in versions. With electric power steering, here you can buy a restored rack for 20,000 to 30,000 or repair your own for the same money. The pump costs 15,000 in the original version and from 5,000 for a substitute. So, it is worth to check the level and cleanliness of oil in the system, but the revealed problems are a reason for bargaining, but not for refusal of purchase. One of the highlights of Insignia was the all-wheel drive, and now it too can be one of the important factors for purchase. Especially considering that here, unlike other models like the Mokka, it doesn't use a conventional electromagnetic clutch, but a fourth-generation Haldex. The system works quickly and is very reliable, of course, on condition of regular oil change at least once in 50,000 to 60,000 kilometers. It is worth to check it and optional electronically controlled rear differential lock when buying. Given such a set, one should not be surprised that many owners were delighted with their cars. However, now we will have to find out whether everyone was equally delighted with their maintenance. As we remember, the basic transmission option was a manual gearbox, which many people did not want, and the aftermarket clearly reflects this dislike. Cars with MKP in the sale only about 30%. Gasoline versions were equipped with a 6-speed box with the Index F40, which can be considered a good option. Certainly, it is worth to listen to it on an elevator, having checked condition of oil seals and oil cleanliness, but as a whole it is not peculiar to problems with bearings, as, for example, at M32. But the economy from owning a car with mechanics is not so great, as it would be desirable. 2-mass flywheel here costs 30,000, which is relatively cheap, but the set of clutch will cost another 20,000, so a one-time investment of 50,000 without taking into account the work may seem big to someone. With diesel motors works the above-mentioned box M32, more problematic and demanding to service, but we have a combination of diesel and mechanics is almost never met, so once again remember its inborn features will not have to. The desired alternative to mechanics was an automatic. It is either AF40-6, aka TF80SC from Aisin, or 6T45 jointly developed by GM and Ford. The first one can be considered a more preferable option. Let it belongs to modern automatic transmission with complex management, aggressive work of torque converter lock, high operating temperatures and great sensitivity to oil purity, but good maintenance and moderate driving can prolong its life up to 200 to 250,000 kilometers. The second is potentially more capricious. We wrote in detail about its features, for example, in the review of used Opel Astra J. Opel Astra J here to the lack of cooling, high temperature and rapid oil contamination are added mechanical deficiencies, problems with solenoids and so on. In general, you should not save on diagnostics when buying a car with any of the automatic transmissions, but in the case of the second, it is better to start saving up for repairs in advance. Insignia received a whole scattering of motors, and with the restyling the engine range has been changed. At first, there were two atmospheric variants, A16XER and A18XER for 1.6 and 1.8 litres respectively. Both belong to the old guard of Opel's motors, simple and reliable, and their only disadvantage can be considered unremarkable dynamics. 140 and certainly 115 atmospheric forces and 155 to 175 Newton-meters was not enough for a car with a mass of 1.5 tons. Well and about automatic transmission with them could not go in speech. The supercharged 1.6-litre motor is a 16-let, which is also from the old school, but equipped with a supercharger and somewhat lost in reliability. On the Corsa OPC, its more boosted version A16LER suffers from problems with insufficient lubrication of the fourth cylinder liners, and its overheating, which usually results in scoring and reassembly. Otherwise, the motor is not bad and inexpensive to maintain, although it is demanding to the quality of lubrication and fuel experienced. Owners feed it exclusively with 98M petrol. Even more powerful variant is 2-litre A20 NHT for 220 forces. Here there is already a twin-scroll turbine with 2 snails, and direct injection, so, despite the general success of the motor, the cost of potential repair is higher. Well and crown the motor range 2 8-litre V6 with indices A28 net A28 NER in 2 variants of forcing. 260 forces on usual cars and 325 in OPC version. These engines are also quite reliable, and from weak points it is possible to note only timing life and high operating temperature. However, now, after 7 to 10 years of operation, a lot will depend on how they were maintained and operated. If you are ready to pay $50,000 of transportation tax and you have enough money for maintenance, Insignia OPC can be considered. A very good option for a fast car for a long time. The key is to find a well-maintained car. After restyling, the 1.6-litre atmospheric engine was removed from the range, and it was replaced by a 1.4-litre supercharged A14 net. It belongs to the low-volume Family 0 family and retains the cast-iron block and simple distributed injection, and the timing is chain rather than belt. It can be considered as a good choice. It pulls better than atmospherics, and in maintenance is more expensive except for the cost of turbine. The main innovation was 1.6-litre motor A16 XHT with marketing name City, indicating direct injection. It also did not show itself as problematic, and did not hit the latest trends. For example, lightning to the detriment of strength. Was not engaged here and even kept the cast-iron block. However, it is worth remembering that taking into account the age, potential investments may be bigger. The fuel injection system, injectors and supercharger will require money sooner or later. But the dynamics of a car with such a motor is quite decent, and fuel consumption is moderate. A couple of words can be said about diesels, which are not very popular in our country, occupying about 20% of the secondary market. The main mass of proposals is a variant A20 DTH for 160 horsepower, and in general, all motors have a volume of 2 litres and belong to the Multijet family of Fiat Chrysler development. Diesels can also be considered a good choice for Insignia. They have no inherent serious problems, and the main issue with regard to age is the condition and remaining life of fuel equipment and supercharger. Well, now, having briefly dealt with the peculiarities of the choice of used Insignia, we can try to form a portrait of a good copy. Taking into account that there are no frankly unsuccessful motors here, it is quite possible to choose a car, proceeding from own wishes to dynamics and cost of maintenance. Those who are looking for a car for a long period of time can pay attention to atmospheric motors, sacrificing dynamics. Those who want to get decent dynamics will prefer a car with a turbo engine for 1.6 or 2 litres. With $1 million, you can choose a well-maintained copy from the first owner, about like this. Those who are ready to add some money can look for that all-wheel drive country tourist station wagon so fervently loved by owners. Here too, there are chances to find a good car. Here is one of the options. Well, those who are ready to pay well for a combination of outstanding dynamics and practicality will pay attention to cars of OPC line, the more so that there were not only sedans, but also station wagons in it. And here, too, there are still chances to find a car from the first owner. For example, like this. True, the price of error here is already much higher, so you need to check the car before buying as carefully as possible. A good help in this will be special services such as Autoteca, where you can check the accident history, and registered mileage, and the presence of restrictions, and much more. And if on top of that you are a little lucky, then perhaps you too will not be able to find an equivalent alternative to a fast and beautiful station wagon or sedan. In conclusion, the Opel Insignia stands out as a remarkable vehicle that often flies under the radar, despite its impressive features and performance. For 1 million rubles, it offers a compelling blend of comfort, technology, and driving dynamics that can rival more popular competitors. While it may not have garnered the sales figures it deserves, this car presents a unique opportunity for those willing to look beyond the mainstream. If you value quality and are seeking a distinctive option in the market, the Opel Insignia could very well be worth your investment. Thank you for watching, and we hope this insight helps you make an informed decision.